Welcome back to Roll for Adventure. Today we're looking at the game Project Ninja Panda Taco. We're lucky enough to be joined by Jennifer Steen, the designer of the game. Welcome to the show, Jennifer.
Hi, thanks for having me.
So what inspired you to create the game?
Well, it all started, used to have a podcast called Genisodes, and I think as a podcaster in, the gaming community, you're interviewing or you're talking about all these games and you're like, I should probably make one. Like, I know all this stuff, like I have all these resources, I talk to all these people. You start collecting all that information, like I really should come up with a game. So I'm like, okay, well, what do I want to have it about? I'm like, but I always wanted a minion. Like, maybe I should have one about masterminds and minions, because I love like Despicable Me, like all those cartoony, like Pinky and the Brain was a huge inspiration. So it kind of started there, and I kind of started picking up ideas. And I was going to a lot of conventions, so I was talking to a lot of people. There might have been some drinks involved, get the conversation flowing, ideas going, creativeness, and it kind of all flowed from there.
What were your main design goals?
When I started out, I wanted it to be like a kid's game. I wanted it very colorful. I wanted it fun. I wanted it for parents to play with their kids and some like the teenagers to be able to play on their own and do it like that. I know, so I have a lot of designers who are like, okay, well, don't think about the end product. Think about, like you should be concentrating on actually designing the game, because you can't make the game unless you have it finished. But I was like, okay, well, I had these ideas in the back of my head of what I wanted it to look like. I wanted it like a square hardback cover, like book, lots of illustrations through the whole thing, a very fun feel to it. So that was kind of like the design goals. Being able to play it with like a minimum of 3 people to like 6, so that came into like the design. Like, how do you get enough people to play, but not too many people? Like, what's that good ratio? Like 4 to 6, 3 to, trying to get those numbers.
So how would you sum up the game for somebody new to role-playing?
Well, it's very fun, lighthearted. You're taking over the world. You get to be that mastermind, but you also get to play a minion. So it's a kind of different than other games where you only have one character. You get 2 here. And you get to take turns playing. You get to be as wacky as possible. So the more wacky and outrageous, like think Pinky in the Brain, where he just comes up with these outrageous ideas, like that's what you want. You want to capture the moon and like shrink it down. That's exactly the ideas you want to have. So all these goals in life that you have of like taking over the world, you actually get to play that in a fun, hopefully family-oriented kind of way. There have been games where they've gone in a different direction at conventions, but it's supposed to be able to span like different age ranges, so you can have fun playing with kids, or you can have fun as adults, like hanging out like at night, like on a Friday night playing. So yes. It's supposed to be very fun, very active, very like everybody participates, everybody helps make each other's characters. So that was another design goal, actually, but very interactive. So no one's sitting there for more than like 2 minutes not talking.
Are there any aspects of the game you think could work better?
I did this back in, I want to say 2012 is 2013 is when I designed it and printed it. A couple of things have come up afterwards to make it, like a little more seamless, a little more, maybe how the book was presented. I think I've gone back and been like, oh, maybe I should have had a page in there about that, or changing it that way. But I think overall, like how the game works, it went through extensive playtesting and editing. So I think the core game is good, there and done. I wouldn't change anything about that. Maybe just more about like the presentation, forgetting a couple like explanations in there to help with someone new just picking up the book and being able to play right off of it.
So if you could go back and change anything about the game, would you?
I mean, if I did go back to do it, I still have a lot of books, so I wouldn't be making another edition. Like, because when you look at, I ended up doing a Kickstarter, so when figuring out the Kickstarter, you want it, to cover your costs. That was like my goal. Not every Kickstarter is like that, but my goal was to cover all the costs, especially for the artists, the editors, like the layout. Like that was important to me, but also getting enough product so it was cost effective to people buying it too. So to get a hardcover, full color book printed, you have to start looking at like the bigger numbers of the print sizes to bring down that cost per unit. So I ended up getting like 1,000 books, which sounds like a lot. It is. It comes on a big pallet. Yes, to your house, and they drop it off and they drive away and they leave it at the end of your driveway. And books are heavy, so having to find a place in your house to put them all, if they don't go directly to a distributor. So I don't think I'll be doing a second edition.
Project Ninja Panda Taco is unusual for an RPG in that it has a winner at the end of the game. What was your thinking behind this?
Having a winner at the end, I mean, like a mastermind, someone, like I always wanted someone to win at the end. I mean, it might just be for fun, someone could tie, but that was always a design goal. You're doing all this stuff, you're competing with each other, there should be a winner. It's kind of how the game evolved. I feel like it kind of would just be, I don't know, not a letdown, but it just didn't fit right if everybody won. If nobody wins, that's fun. It's because you all failed in somehow, but you're always trying to succeed. So winning and succeeding kind of go hand in hand. So that's how it evolved to have a winner at the end.
Why did you decide to go with a storytelling style for the whole book rather than splitting into, say, story and mechanics sections?
That came about through my editor, John Adamus. He was like this awesome RPG editor. He's done a ton of stuff on different games, but we kind of were going back and forth, and I don't feel like I'm like the best writer. That's not what I do a lot. It's not I'm much more better at like art and science and math and stuff. So writing isn't such a, yay, I get to write a book. But we were talking, I couldn't find my writing style. And he's like, well, why don't you just write it from the point of view of a character? I'm like, oh, well, I can write like a minion or like a mastermind. I could like start picking up their terms. So like I have a couple masterminds, which help with the artwork too. How would this guy explain the story? So now when you're reading it, it's from the point of view of masterminds and minions explaining the game to you. I thought that would be helpful too for kids to get more into it. If they're picking up the book, they're reading it, they're like, oh, this is a cool like comic type, art. Oh, I can read this, I can understand it. And also when you're writing as a character and you have to explain it through someone else's voice, it also helped write the rules better and explaining the rules as opposed to just having like bulleted like lists of things. And it kind of be dry. I didn't want it to be dry. I wanted it to be like fun. If you're going to read my book, you at least should have fun reading it.
Did you ever consider making PNPT a board or a card game rather than a role-playing game?
I've thought about doing like a card game or a board game or something. Just never got to that point. I ended up having a child, so that kind of stalled out all the gaming stuff. But I feel like I always want to keep going back to it to design something, but I need to find like the time to do it because it is a time constraint. If I'm going to do it, I want to do it right. It's just like I need to find that time, that goal, that inspiration. I don't want to make something into a board game or a card game that's just like every other game or the mechanics are already there. I want to put a good spin to it. So now you're looking into like play testing and then taking the game itself to like the next level of actually printing it and creating it for other people to buy and have. So maybe someday. As the child gets older and can play it too. I think I'm kind of waiting for he's just turning 2, so maybe when he can start playing like a 4-year-old type game, maybe I thought about doing like different levels. So as he got older, making like a card game for him with Masterminds and Minions and Project Ninja Panda Taco. So maybe I might get there.
We've found the game often boils down to who offered the best reward, regardless of the plan. Do you think a few more limitations on the rewards could really help the game?
I mean, it could. I feel like I kind of left that really open to, if you're playing it with a lot of friends, like a whole bunch of times, you could always do some house rules. If you're finding that it's not as much fun for some way, like you should be able to implement your own. So it's kind of broad to give you the basis to do things. I've had some teachers come back and say, they used it in their classroom. They tailored it down to like 45 minutes so like they get the kids to like come up with creative things. During playtesting, I had, like people voting. I think the whole voting thing helps too. But it also then maybe you should come up with better ideas. But you can have house rules. I feel like, with D&D and other games, you make it for your group. So I think if you set too many limitations, kind of you're forcing everybody to do it that way. But yeah. Yeah, I want people to be as creative as they want. So if you want to go bigger, and that's why there's a couple rounds, you have a couple turns, everybody's getting a chance to go back and forth. Having the turn thing too is good because everybody gets their chance. So even if they're not very good at coming up with something, they can still have fun. Stuff like that.
So where do you see Project Ninja Panda Taco going in the future?
Maybe trying to do like a board game or a card game. Talking about it after so long, like trying to, start coming up with some ideas. I'm starting to get more time now. So going to like conventions again, starting to get back into everything. It's kind of want to take the game maybe to the next level of branching out into like a Project Ninja Panda Taco like series or something. I don't know.
So what's your favourite villain to come out of a PNPT game?
That's a tough one. I think like the ones that I came up with for like the book, the Baron and Mastermind Slytherin on the covers, like those are probably two of my favorite. Kind of got the ideas from playtesting and like from other people, and so from playtesting I was able to like kind of pull on everybody else's ideas to like make that into like a character that had a voice and a goal and stuff. So